Welcome to the Tales from the Pros podcast by Imaginovation. In the world of tech and business, it's easy to get caught up in the tools, tactics, and chasing revenue. But behind every breakthrough, there's always a deeper story, driven by people building with purpose and meaning. This show is for the founders, business leaders, innovators, and entrepreneurs doing the hard work, navigating challenges, leading through change, and building things that matter. We're here to bridge the gap between technology and people through honest, raw storytelling in the world of innovation and without all the BS. Tales from the Pros. Real conversations, real growth. Hey everyone, welcome back to Tales from the Pros, and I'm your host, Michael Georgiou, co-founder at Imaginovation, joined by my co-host and director of growth, Eric Lawrence. Today, we're diving into a topic that hits close to home for a lot of leaders: navigating change. Whether it's a new system, a shift in direction, or introducing AI, as we all know, into your workflows, leading people through disruption is one of the hardest things you'll ever do. That's why we're thrilled to have Cesar Viana Teague on the show today. He's a change management and enablement technology leader who helps other leaders turn disruption into results. His APEEE model simplifies the process of transformation, making it actionable and measurable. And he's worked with leaders across the US and around the world to bring real adoption and growth through times of major change. Cesar, welcome to Tales from the Pros. It's great to have you here, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, to you and Michael and Eric.
Yes. Cesar, if you'd like, just kind of as an initial question here, like, give us a little bit, in maybe a minute or two, a little bit about your story, just kind of how you got to where you are right now, doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And so I started off, really my background is in sales and marketing. So I've been doing
Okay.
that for, over 35 years.
Yeah. Nice.
And in the process, I started, really doing some training, facilitation, some instruction design, and that was about years ago. And so then 12 years ago, I really got more into the enablement and change management space. So the activities we're doing in enablement change management have been around for a while. Maybe the nomenclature hasn't been around for that long. We're calling it enablement or change management or both. And so I do a little bit of both. And so I was doing that to enable different teams, technology companies or non-technology companies, leaders of operations, and just really helping them raise their awareness around the work they're doing as a leader to influence others to enable change. And because a lot of folks don't necessarily like change or they want to change, but there's a lot of benefits from changing. Hence, that's why I call my website's called Change is Good.
Yeah.
I can be. It not always is, but the idea is to empower, especially technology leaders with the rapid pace of change uh, and iterations involved within software development, which you guys know full well in the work
Yeah.
you do in Imaginovation. That I'm not talking about change management within software development. There is that because I actually talked to a buddy of mine whose son worked for Stripe, and I told him I was doing change management. He goes, "Hey, that's what I do for Stripe." I go, "That's a different kind of change management."
That's cool. We use Stripe a lot. I mean, as we, it's
One of the
such a big
main
platform.
integrations. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so there's iterations and change management within software development, right? And the whole agile process or what have you. And so, but I'm talking about the change management that is about the people.
That's
And
what I thought.
so, yeah, and so then that's what I've been doing. And I got into that because, again, of the training and coaching work I've been doing with other folks. And then I went out and if I'm expecting people to improve and to do things differently, then I have to do that myself. So I kind of went back to school, went back to get certifications and all those fun things. And then as you explore all these areas, you realize, man, there's so much out there, how much you don't know. The more you see, the more you learn, the more you realize how much there is yet to learn. And so anyway, that's kind of like what I've been doing. So I'm continuously improving myself, and then that way I can continue to add value to others. And that's what I do in essence for helping with the whole change management piece. And that's how I got into it.
Great. Cesar, I am interested to know, kind of going through the journey that you had, if there were any early experiences or lessons that shaped at least how you approach guiding people through disruption?
Yeah. And so, we're brought in, people are brought in, whether on the enablement and change management side, you're brought in to solve challenges. You were there. I mean, come on, people are hired for a reason. They're there to solve problems, to fix to ensure growth and
Yeah,
everything else, and trying to make it a smooth process. So, I mean, there's been so many challenges that I've faced along the way, and they don't continue to get easier, by the way. So, most of the toughest problems are people problems. And the major issues are usually around people. I mean, we've heard of the CEOs firing people all at once on Zoom, or we've heard of just people, of course, at this point with AI, a lot of fear around that and, jobs being replaced. And some people saying, well, no, jobs aren't being replaced. And it's both true and not true. It's just, the way I look at it, AI is more about augmentation than it is about automation, although it's really a bit of both. But
I agree.
so there's been some instances where I've come in, I started working with technology companies in 2012, really, when I started that for, a travel software company. And then I moved into another company that did some high performance computing, and then to an IT company that manages a lot of the major systems like the Oracles, the SAPs, and those things, because arguably the most complex change comes with the most complex software. And what software are you going to find that's more complex than ERP? Maybe you know of one. I think ERP is arguably one of the most. And why is that? Well, because it
Yeah,
touches a lot of departments, right? It touches a
right.
lot of people. So then you're asking a lot of people to change the way they're doing things. And that is a disruption. That is, oh, you mean I have to do this in addition to my day job? Or why are we doing this? All the questions that emerge, including in the back of people's minds, is my role going to be eliminated because of this change? So there's a little bit a lot of I asked a lot of questions there and raised a lot of points because I've really encountered those things along the way without mentioning any specific companies. Those are the types of technology companies I've been involved with, including with Salesforce ERP. There are actually some native Salesforce ERP platforms out there, believe it or not. There's only like two or three, but it's still ERP. It's still complicated and it
Mhm.
still touches a lot of folks. And so the idea of change management is not about the training on the new tool on the ERP system. Yes, that's very important, but I think a lot of what's been going on in the change management piece has really revolved around how are we going to train people and get them to adopt and apply this new tool or this new system, whether it's a
Yeah.
GTM tool or what have you, right? So I'll pause there for a second, and maybe you have some other questions around that.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say, no, I love it. I think what you do, Caesar, is actually very unique. Eric, it reminds me of, some of the customers we work with. You know how, like, if let's just say a bigger company that that we worked with before, that they come to us and they want us to basically build a centralized system that connects with hundreds of different third party systems that they use, ERP being one of them, maybe a CRM, God knows what else. I mean, so many different types of systems that can connect to one that we build, right? To basically centralize and align their departments with, at least maybe on a data perspective, let's just say. And what we've experienced sometimes is like the lack of alignment between those departments. And when there's a piece of software that's being built, at least in this case, because that's kind of our area too, is that it can cause a lot of kind of internal clutter and frustration, misalignment. It can just create a lot of like red tape and just a lot of issues that we've experienced. And I
Mhm.
think for you and what you do is really awesome, because a lot of these organizations need that, especially now with AI. And you mentioned fear, right? Being, kind of a component now, where I think people just don't really know what to kind of do. They need that guidance from someone like you to help align, their internal people and even externally to their customers. I think that's really cool.
For sure, and productivity is going to dip for sure. There is no way around that because you're doing juggling, a couple of new approaches and new technologies. So productivity will dip initially. The question is for how long and how to accelerate the process to get people up to speed faster and minimize that dip. Right. And because again, people have been making it about, training people and getting that. But if you're getting resistance and you have, just like the technology adoption curve where you have the early adopters, and then you have the majority in the middle of the bell curve, and then you have the laggards and those people on the other end, that applies very much here as well. And the reason for that, that's why I try to take a step back. I use my APEE model, as you mentioned, and I take a step back and I work with the technology leaders or subject matter experts, or SMEs, to see, all right, what are we going to do here in terms of clarifying for people our vision and mission behind this change? Why are we making the change? And from this an internal perspective, change management, like you said, can be applied internally with things that are happening within the company, or when you're selling a new software or new tools to other companies, you expect your clients to adopt it, but then if you don't do proper change management with them, what ends up happening is scope creep, or as what a client of mine calls it, scope explosion.
I love that scope explosion. Oh, that happens all the time. I like
Yep.
that.
Every
I mean,
project,
scope
it seems.
explosion.
You write every project because the SOW, the statement of work, which was for 100 hours or 500 hours, has now tripled or quadrupled because of what's being asked along the way. Maybe they weren't, really aligned. You talked about the misalignment. Well, it's very hard to align people if you're not taking the time to communicate. And change management a lot of it is about communication.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The alignment, when you say alignment, that's a very important word, but how do you align? And so that's where proper change management comes in, to make that effort and take a step back and use this APE model I've come up with. It's not a change management model per se. There's ADKAR from ProSci out there. There's the McKinsey 7S. There's the Cotter 8-step or N-step method of change management specifically.
I've heard of those
I'm
before
saying
too.
let's take a step back. Yeah, take a step back and do some strategic planning for the change, and then you can decide which model are you going to use for the actual change itself. But you still need to take that step back and do an analysis and assessment of where are we and how are we going to communicate the why. Kind of like that famous TED talk that Simon Sinek did about, start with why. Really important in change management to start with why, especially from an internal basis, to clarify, why are we doing this? Then you reduce that resistance and minimize the disruptions, etc.
Yeah. And
You're
could
talking
you?
our language. Yeah, we
Yeah,
love that. The why, the purpose is so important. It's critical.
it is. It is. Could you actually talk to us a little bit about the this model that you've been mentioning? Just kind of
Yeah,
like what does it stand for? Because I know it's an acronym.
sure.
But
Yeah,
and what does that course look like for somebody that you're taking it through?
sure. Yeah. So I'm building the course actually as we speak.
Nice.
And it's a 5 module because APEEE is for A is for analyze and assess. The P is for planning. First E is for execute, and then evaluate, and then exit or evolve. And so the A, the analyze and assess piece is really analyzing. You do a SWOT analysis, you're doing stakeholder interviews and gathering the information and gleaning from there. Okay, what's really going on? Where are we aligned? Where are the gaps? And then doing some from there some change impact and readiness for the change as part of that analyze and assess piece. Now that informs the planning, and when I say planning, I'm talking about what are the objectives, strategies, and tactics that comprise the plan of what are we going to do on this? What are the strategies we're going to implement? Usually it's about, let's say 4 strategies or so. And then the tactics, the day-to-day, week-to-week activities that we're going to execute on. And so the execution is really about executing on the strategy and the tactics, right? That E. And then we're evaluating it on a monthly, quarterly basis. What's happening? What do we need to tweak and adjust? And then overall, in the end, when you're doing your exit and evolution, you're really getting some feedback on what did we learn from this project? What did we do well? And what are we going to do differently next time? And I'm very big on saying differently as opposed to better, because when you do something better, you get an incremental gain. When you do something differently, there's a chance you'll get an exponential gain. But when you're doing something differently, it inherently requires the change. And everybody talks about, you look at their values, right? You see
Yeah.
innovation.
Yep.
Well, innovation requires risk. But if your culture is not such that you accept risk, people fail, they get reprimanded or whatever. That's not really a culture that's empowering the innovation. And
It's almost
so,
counterproductive. It's like a counterproductive value in a way. It's like you're willing to put it on your marketing material and talk about it. It might sound good and look good, but you actually got to be willing to internalize it and take on the one of the biggest elements with innovation is risk, right? You got to be willing to
huge,
risk things.
huge.
Yeah.
And you know, you really, it's so easy to say, but you really have to have the Edison 9,999 times that didn't work and the 10,000 times that did. Well, were those failures? Well, a lot of people will view those other as failures because you failed to make the bulb work along the way. Well, yes, but there were really iterations and learning points to make it work. But that's not really a failure then. So to me, failing is when you stop trying. Pure and simple.
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah, it's interesting, because one of the things you said earlier in this episode was, talking about resistance and even getting decision makers, stakeholders to buy into something. Let's just say, it could be like, one of the hardest things about implementing, for example, a new software or system in an organization. Whether it's a CRM, ERP, you talked about that quite a few times, and an AI tool maybe, is getting people to actually use it, right? It can be implemented, but if you're having 1% of the people internally that are using it, it's very counterintuitive, it's counterproductive, it's not going to be effective in the company. It's not going to provide any value. So, like, my question is, in terms of that, what do you see as the biggest reason people resist change? And how can leaders start building buy-in early on in that process?
The biggest reason is because people, like I was saying earlier, they do not understand the purpose and
Okay.
what's in it for them for the change. Why are we doing this? What's the vision and mission around this change? Am I bought into it? And how is it going to affect me in my job? You have to answer those three questions up front. And in order to do that as a leader, you have to be an authentic leader. And an authentic leader requires a certain amount of transparency, EQ, and CQ, emotional intelligence and cultural intelligence.
Yeah.
That's part of my research I did at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology, right? As part of my PhD in organizational leadership. It's about this merging of those. So you have to do those things in order to gain the trust of people who want to go along with you. It's like you're climbing Mount Everest, and you want to climb Mount Everest with a leader who kind of know a Sherpa and some people who know the way. That if you're going to get to 10,000 the base camp, you may not even get past 10,000 foot base camp. You may end up
Yep.
being stuck there for a while before you can even make progress. But why are we doing this?
Yeah. You're not going to go to camp 1, camp 2. You're going to stay on base camp and that's it. Maybe even head back.
Yeah.
To the
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And then if you keep on making it up there, you may not make it back at all, which has happened a lot to people. They just didn't make it back for very obviously other reasons, weather, but you still have to be bought in order to take the journey. It's a journey. Change management is that journey. How are we as leaders empowering the folks on the journey? How are we informing them? How are we communicating to them the why behind it? And more importantly, how are we inviting them to co-design
Mhm.
that change to begin with, which is part of the strategy that I use that a lot of this, like 70% of change initiatives don't succeed. Well, it's because people aren't bought in, and the people aren't bought in because you can't show up and say, "Hey, Michael, Eric, here's what we're going to Here's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be implementing this new Salesforce CRM system. Make it happen. Go run with it." Then it becomes a giant paperweight. which is what happened with the CRM systems back, earlier on. And so they're not using it appropriately because they didn't quite understand, what to do and, why are we doing this, et cetera. So you got to start there first. Very important. And that's what I help people to do.
And I guess one last question here before we kind of finish up, and in maybe like in a minute or so, explaining, in terms of AI, right? How do you see AI reshaping your approach and what you do every day, right? Helping these organizations. How do you kind of reshape your approach to change management? And what should leaders be doing differently as automation, or, you talked about, what was the other one? It was automation and augmentation. Yep, that's it. I love that. That kind of a balance of both. How does
Mhm.
that become more embedded in business through AI from your
Yeah, I mean,
experience?
we're seeing people say this from Benioff, from Salesforce to other leaders. They're saying that, the idea is to free people up of the lower value activities that AI can now take care of so that we're doing higher value activities to add more value to the company, to our clients, to our communities.
Mm,
That's really what it's going to come down to. I mean, I use AI for doing my research. It's making my research and reporting, a lot faster. And then you heard about Agent Force at Salesforce, where we were driving a lot of the customer service that's being taken care of online for the people who want the fast answers, so you can spend more time with the folks who need more in-depth conversations and all that. Otherwise, how are you going to manage that? And so that's really what it's about. And how are we doing that as a company to empower the folks in our company to then be doing higher value tasks?
yeah.
And so that's why I think that's what we're taking a look at in terms of the change piece and how we can help with.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I know you got to run, Caesar. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. I think even in just 20 something minutes, we got a lot of value, a lot of golden nuggets in there, and I might even have you on the show again. There's a lot of
Thank
things I
you.
want to pick your brain on. I think it's very interesting. Honestly, we deal with a lot with what you're talking about, and
Yeah,
just kind of in our journey, and we're very
sure.
grateful for you to be here. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
everything, and we'll see you soon. Okay, thank you so much
Thank
again.
you.
Thank you, Caesar.
All
Take
right.
care. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Eric. Enjoy. See
All
you
right.
soon. Bye bye.
Again, my name is Michael Georgiou, your host from Tales from the Pros, with my co-host, Eric Lawrence, doing Cesar Viana Teague. Thank you so much, everyone. Until next time, take care. Thank you. Please subscribe to our YouTube page and also follow our social media. There are links somewhere around here. But we really appreciate it, guys. Thanks for all the support. And I'm going to be giving you awesome content continuously. And we look forward to seeing you soon.